Remove your 5 21mm lug nuts. Remove the front wheel. Take off the 2 17mm nuts. And 1 17mm bolt. Remove the cotter pin out of the ball joint castle nut. I'm unable to remove the ball joint nut, so I'm going to put the nuts back on. And the bolt. And I'm going to drop the knuckle down. Remove the cotter pin out of the outer tie rod ball joint. $17mm socket. Remove the nut on the end of the ball joint. Using a large hammer, you can hit on the side of the knuckle where the ball joint sits to release it, or you can use a ball joint puller. Once it's released, you can remove the ball joint from the knuckle. Using a 12mm socket, we're going to release the brake hose bracket and the wheel speed sensor bracket, or the ABS sensor bracket. Pull that straight off, pull that up and out of the way. Do not twist this wire as best as you can. We're going to remove this ABS harness bracket. It's a plastic bracket. There's 2 tabs, one on each side. Pull outward and then straight off. Using a 10mm socket, we're going to remove the ABS sensor out of the knuckle. Using a 30mm axle nut socket, remove the axle nut. This axle is not moving inside of the splines, so we're going to use a soft face mallet and give it a little tap to make sure it can move. Make sure the axle will move freely inside of the splines. Using a 22mm wrench and a 22mm socket, we're going to hold the head of the bolt and take the nut off. Leave the bolt in there and do the same thing on the bottom one. Remove the bolts out of the knuckle. Pull the knuckle forward. With the strut bolts out, drop the knuckle down forward. Now we're going to pull the axle out. Put the axle back in. All right, now that we have control arm pressure pulling down on the ball joint, we're going to smack right here with a hammer until this pops out. Now that our ball joint is free, we're going to remove the nuts and bolt. Install the nuts back into the ball joint. Torque these lower bolts to 68 foot-pounds. Tighten down the ball joint nut. Then we're going to torque it to 95 foot-pounds. If you can't get a torque wrench in there, do the best you can. Install the cotter pin. Because of limited space, I'm having to use a few extra tools to be able to bend this cotter pin. Install the axle nut onto the axle. Tighten it down. Using a bar to hold the hub still, I'm going to torque the axle nut to 216 foot-pounds. Install the ABS clip onto the strut. Here it click in. Put that inside of the knuckle. Torque the strut bolts to 215 foot-pounds. Install the ABS sensor into the knuckle. Tighten down the bolt, and we'll torque it to 6 foot-pounds. Put the ball joint stud back into the knuckle. And put your castle nut on. Torque your castle nut to 36 foot-pounds, and then up to an additional 60 degrees, or until a slot in the nut lines up with the hole to be able to put a new cotter pin through. Put in your new cotter pin, and bend the tab down. Install the front wheel. Put in your 5 lug nuts. You will need an alignment after this job is completed. Tighten the lug nuts down in a star pattern to make sure the wheel seat's square. And then with the car on the ground, we'll torque the wheels. Torque your lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.